Hello and good morning to everyone to the UNESCO Sim Caribbean Content Creators webinar. As we begin to populate the room, please allow me to share a brief introduction of myself. My name is Arita Phillip. I am the Associate Program Specialist for Communication and Information here at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean and a National UN volunteer. And today I'm joining you from the land of 365 beaches, Antigua and Barbuda, and will be your moderator for the entirety of today's webinar. As we allow persons to fill up the room for the next few minutes, I would with me your name, your organization, and the country that you're joining us from in the chat. So please feel free to say good morning, hello, and let us know where you're joining us from, the organization that you represent, and of course, your name. As you know, we have a very packed agenda for you with a lot of enriching information on media and information literacy with both a regional lens and, of course, with national contributions from our partnering member states. Of course, we will begin today's session with an introduction and welcome from Mr. Eric Fault, who is our Regional Director and Representative for the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. But before we begin, and before we share that presentation with you, please allow me to recognize our partners and share a brief background of Sim Caribbean and, of course, some very minor but important housekeeping rules. So Secretaries General of the National Commissions for UNESCO in Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Commonwealth of Dominica, country focal points for Sim Caribbean, senior government officials and government officers, UN colleagues, international and regional partners, members of the media, academia, private sector, youth and civil society, aspiring and current content creators, persons working in the media space, influencers and presenters. Official good morning and welcome to you. Yes, I'm also seeing that we have some good mornings in the chat from our colleagues. Good morning, Paul. Paul is the advisor to communication and information. You can see him on screen in blue at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. We also have on screen Ms. Kiran Maharaj, who is the president of the Media Institute of the Caribbean. We also have good morning greetings from Jennifer Britton, who is joining us from the CARICOM Secretariat and is delighted to be with us here today. Good morning to you all. And of course, good morning to all of our participants. Natalie, I have received the notification that the chat is disabled. And so persons are going to be sharing their feedback in the Q&A segment. So we welcome you to share your feedback with us in the Q&A. So since the chat is going to be disabled for today's session, my apologies for not confirming that. I'm grateful
Um,
for your feedback and you're welcome
Excuse
in
me,
the
Arita.
Q&A. Sure, Natalie.
I enabled the chat so participants can know.
Okay. Thank you, Natalie. All right, so the chat is now open. We welcome your good morning greetings. We appreciate all of your warm feedback. Please let us know your name, where you're joining us from, and your organization. We look forward to hearing that from you. But so far in the Q&A, we have Miss Alyssa Derrick, Peter Williams, and we have some attendees who have joined us anonymously. Thank you and welcome for being prompt and on time. So as we await those additional greetings in the chat, I wanted to share with you just a bit of background information on the Sim Caribbean Initiative and why we are here today. So, as you may know, UNESCO is the organization that first proposed the term media and information literacy in 2007. Since then, UNESCO has partnered with governments to support citizens and stakeholders with the development of media and information literacy, AI, and digital competencies. To advance efforts of Caribbean small island developing states as they transform digitally, UNESCO has identified 5 member states that will receive targeted interventions online and in country. And the SIDS Inclusive Initiative on Media and Information Literacy in the Caribbean, or SIM Caribbean as you know it in short, has received funding from the Multi-Donor Program on Freedom of Expression and the Safety of Journalists. And we, of course, would receive funding specifically from the MDP for Media and Information Literacy. And that is how we are joining you here today to share the good news of media and information literacy within the Caribbean context. For our housekeeping rules, we ask that you kindly update your name on Zoom to your full name and if possible, also your organization. We encourage you to ask questions to the different presenters, to put this specifically using the question and answer icon so that we are able to channel that specific feedback and we do not have to look to the chat for this sort of feedback. The question and answer icon is, of course, located at the bottom of your page, the bottom of your screen. After each presentation, of course, I will support the presentations by fielding your questions. So of course, through that question and answer feature that I've just identified. If you do have a verbal contribution, we invite you to raise your hand, wait to be identified, and then you will be unmuted. And of course, we encourage you to always identify yourself by your name, the agency or organization that you're representing or country, whenever you are making a contribution or asking a question. Of course, it may go without saying that we ask all participants to be respectful when sharing feedback and engaging with presenters. Any of the questions that we're not able to answer in today's presentation, we will attempt to channel into our upcoming social media engagements on media and information literacy, which we will have via Instagram in late March. Please follow our social media channels so that you can stay engaged on this. And of course, we want you to share any feedback you have following the session on how we may be able to improve and engage you better going forward. And of course, it's very important for you to know that today's session is being recorded, and we will make every attempt to share with you this presentation, this recording, as well as the presentations made by our various presenters. We will have some sign English support throughout today's session, and that will be provided by Mrs. Diane Archibald and Mrs. Jeanette Hosier from Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you so much for your attention with these housekeeping rules and with this background. We will continue with the agenda and we will welcome the presentation and opening remarks will be presented by Mr. Eric Fault, who is the Regional Director and Representative at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. Unfortunately, due to other commitments, Eric is not able to join us this morning virtually, but he has made an effort to record his remarks from Kingston, Jamaica, and my colleague Natalie will now share that recording with you. Over to you, Natalie. Thank you.
Dear friends, in today's world, storytelling has transformed from a simple act of sharing to a force that shapes communities, influences decisions, and even defines the course of events. Digital content creators are no longer just online personalities. You are narrators of our times, chroniclers of political, social, cultural, technological, and environmental realities. Through your creativity, insight, and dedication, millions turn to you, not only for information, but for guidance, connection, and understanding. At UNESCO, We recognize that your role carries extraordinary potential. As our organization's constitution reminds us, building peace in the minds of men and women begins with education, knowledge, and dialogue. Every post, every video, every story you share contributes to this mission. Yet, with this power comes responsibility. Without the necessary media and information literacy competencies, misinformation, disinformation, online hate speech, and gender disinformation can spread quickly, causing harm and eroding trust. UNESCO believes that the best way to counter these threats is by empowering creators like you to act as informed, ethical, and conscientious voices online. Recent events in the Caribbean illustrate both the promise and the challenges of digital storytelling. During Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, for instance, people sought immediate, real-time updates from online creators on many platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook. While government agencies and traditional media provided scheduled updates, audiences also turned to you, the creators, for first-hand accounts, personal reflections, and live perspectives. Yet some content shared in pursuit of virality misrepresented events. Videos circulated that either showed devastation from other countries or old footage from past disasters. This misinformation spread rapidly, reaching audiences at home and abroad, and created much confusion, fear, and unintended harm. UNESCO, together with the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica and the Caribbean School of Media and Communications, responded to these realities by creating Truth Yard, a Jamaican fact-checking platform. This initiative exemplifies how partnerships between content creators, governments, and media organizations can foster accuracy, accountability, and public trust. We believe it is a model for the region and also demonstrates UNESCO's commitment to building capacities that allow digital storytellers to harness their influence responsibly. As creators, your influence is profound. Each piece of content you produce has the potential to inform, inspire, and uplift your audiences. By taking the time to research, verify sources, and reflect before sharing, you can strengthen public understanding, support government efforts in emergency communication, and foster resilience in communities. UNESCO encourages you to embrace this responsibility with pride, creativity, and mindfulness. You have the opportunity to be architects of a media environment that is trustworthy, inclusive, and compassionate. Participation in the SIM Caribbean Content Creators webinar is, we hope, a significant step towards this vision. Today, you will explore critical areas, including journalism ethics and standards, research and fact-checking, countering hate speech and gender disinformation, but also intellectual property rights and mental health management in the digital age. Each session is designed to equip you with practical tools and skills to navigate the online landscape responsibly. You see that I'm using that word a lot, while also strengthening your personal capacity as a leader in Caribbean media and information literacy. UNESCO sees you as the future of this movement, voices capable of shaping a more resilient, informed, and connected Caribbean. Your work matters not just locally, but globally. Caribbean creators are uniquely positioned to tell stories that highlight the region's diversity, resilience, and innovation. By sharing accurate, engaging, and thoughtful content, you contribute to UNESCO's mission to foster intercultural dialogue, social cohesion, and peace. Each story you tell has the potential to educate, to inspire critical thinking, and to bridge communities across borders. I also want to emphasize the human dimension of your role. In times of crisis, content creators can influence mental health and emotional well-being by directing audiences to verified information, acknowledging challenges honestly, and promoting compassion. You can help reduce anxiety and fear while encouraging constructive action. UNESCO advocates for media that not only informs but supports mental health and strengthens social bonds. As you participate in this webinar, I encourage you to engage fully, to ask questions, reflect on your responsibilities, and share what you learn with your audiences. Use the pre-webinar assessment and today's sessions to sharpen your skills, and also in the future remain connected with UNESCO for upcoming opportunities. By doing so, you will not only elevate your own work, but also contribute to a Caribbean information ecosystem that is ethical, resilient, and inspiring. In closing, I urge you to view this webinar not simply as a learning exercise, but also as a call to leadership. You are shaping the future of Caribbean media, guiding audiences through information responsibly and setting standards for integrity, creativity, and care. With your help, UNESCO's mission, which again is to build peace in the minds of women and men through knowledge, dialogue, and shared understanding, can reach every corner of our region. Thank you, and I look forward to the dialogue, insights, and innovations that will emerge from today's sessions.
Rita, you're muted.
Thanks for letting me know, Paul. I was just expressing thanks to Eric Fault, our regional director and representative, for sharing that very kind welcome and opening remarks with us. Of course, he has put before all of us the importance of the role of UNESCO, governments, and multi-stakeholder partners in building media and information literacy in the Caribbean. And of course, he has made a call to action for us to be following this session leaders in this specific area. Before we begin today's very exciting webinar and have the first presentation, I would, of course, like to invite all of our participants to turn their cameras on, if possible, so that we can take a webinar photograph. Of course, there are many of us in this room joining from many countries. I've seen in the chat Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, persons joining us from the Dutch Caribbean islands. And so I'd like to invite all of our participants from across the region to turn your cameras on if possible, so that we may have a webinar photograph. Due to the number of persons in the room, of course, we will have to go slide by slide. And so hopefully we can keep a positive energy and keep smiling as we capture these images. Okay, so I now invite you to turn your cameras on. I will give you a moment to do so, and I will begin to capture our webinar photographs. If you are not able to turn your camera on, we encourage you, of course, to update your name on the Zoom platform so that we would at least be able to recognize who has been in the room with us today. And I will give you an indication once we have been able to complete this process. Thank you all so much for your support. And actually, I've just received a comment saying that there might be some challenges for all participants to turn cameras on. So if from your end, you can just verify if there is a way for you to assist there. Okay. Well, it seems that we're having a delay in the photo taking option at this time. We will allow Natalie some time to work on this, and I will probably give another indication at another point in the session so that we're able to take this photograph so that we can move ahead. But thank you so much for your cooperation. We really appreciate this. Okay. So now that we have tentatively completed a section of the webinar photograph, of course, I want to thank you again for those of you who have made the efforts to complete the pre-webinar assessment. This is a very important part of the work that we're doing here today because, of course, it's very important for us to have an understanding of your media and information literacy competencies. And of course, this is very important for us to be able to potentially identify gaps and areas that we will be able to further support you. Okay. And so I am going to share with you in the chat for those of you who have not had an opportunity to complete that pre-webinar assessment, we will give you an additional opportunity to do so at this time. I have just shared the link to the pre-webinar assessment in the chat. The first message did come up as a text, but you are now able to see that link. So the link to the pre-webinar assessment has been shared with you. We are now going to turn on a 10-minute timer to allow you some time to do that. And once this timer is up, I will proceed by introducing our first presenter, who will be Ms. Kiran Maharaj, who will be doing our presentation on journalism ethics and standards in the Caribbean. Kiran Maharaj is the president of the Media Institute of the Caribbean. So we will now take that 10-minute break to work on the pre-webinar assessments. The link has been shared with you in the chat, and then we will resume with the first presentation of today's Content Creators webinar. Thank you. Just as a reminder and a thank you to the persons who would have completed the pre-webinar assessment in advance as requested, there is no additional requirement to complete this again. We thank you so much for your support. This is just an opportunity for persons who may not have been able to prior to this session to complete that pre-webinar assessment, given its importance to the execution of today's activities. And of course, this pre-webinar assessment is also in alignment with our monitoring and evaluation framework. And there will be a post-webinar assessment that will go along with this. So this is just to allow us to, complete that process. Thank you. Just for your information, a timer has been shared on screen, which will let you know the amount of time remaining for the webinar, the pre-webinar assessment. It is currently 7 minutes remaining. For those of us who are just joining today's Sim Caribbean Content Creators webinar, I would like to let you know that we have just had the opening and welcoming remarks provided by Mr. Eric Fall, the Regional Director and representative of the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. I have shared in the chat a link to the pre-webinar assessment, and we are allowing participants who have not had an opportunity to complete this an additional 10 minutes. There is currently 4 minutes remaining to complete this. And so we are in the process of allowing persons on call who have not completed this pre-webinar assessment to do so now, as it feeds into our greater monitoring and evaluation process. So we ask if you have already completed the pre-webinar assessment that you remain online as we allow our partners and colleagues. If you have already filled it, there is no need to refill the pre-webinar assessments or to complete this again. We thank you so much for being prompt and of course being very timely and for sharing that very important information with us. We also encourage our sign English interpreters to keep their cameras on so that we can see you throughout the entirety of the presentation. We want to let our participants know that we do have sign English interpretation being provided today by our interpreters, Mrs. Diane Archibald and Mrs. Jeanette Hosier, joining us from Antigua and Barbuda. So good morning and welcome. I have seen more persons in the chat indicate that they are from other parts of the Caribbean. We have persons joining us from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, persons joining us from Suriname and Guyana. We also have persons joining us from different institutions, such as the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. We have different government officials from Barbados and other member states. We welcome you all. Thank you all for being on time. I see St. Lucia. Very happy to have St. Lucia with us. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all so much for joining us. We welcome you. Today's session is going to be incredibly informative. We have such a packed session for you today. Of course, you would have received the agenda last evening, so I hope you would have had a chance to revise this and you would have seen, the different areas that we will be covering. We were looking at journalism, research, and ethics. We'll be looking at developing research skills. Welcome and good morning, Suriname. We will be looking at building regional partnerships in the area of content creation, intellectual property rights. And we have some wonderful colleagues here joining us to provide this very important information with you. We have our colleagues joining us to share information on navigating mental health management online. Of course, this is very important as content creators and as persons who are not only receiving but providing information. This is very important for you to have access to this information, and we are here to provide that information to you. And so, as we go within the last minute, we have 1 minute remaining for our colleagues and our partners online who are completing that pre-webinar assessment. Thank you so much for those efforts that you are making to ensure that today's session is absolutely comprehensive and meets the needs of all persons in all of our joining member states. We would like to, of course, encourage you to use that time well. Just for the benefit of the persons who may not have seen the agenda, I will review it with you now. And so again, by way of introduction, my name is Arita Phillip. I am the Associate Program Specialist for Communication and Information at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. I am joining you today from the land of 365 beaches, Antigua and Barbuda, and I am happy to be your moderator today. To begin today's session, we had a welcome address and opening remarks by Eric Fault, who is our Regional Director and representative at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean. We are currently doing the pre-webinar assessment. Next up, we have a presentation on journalism, ethics, and standards by Kiran Maharaj, who is the president of the Media Institute of the Caribbean. Following this, we have a presentation by Elenius Ildefons, PhD, who is the head of the School of Computer Science at the UWI Five Islands, on developing research and fact-checking skills. Following these presentations, we will have a short 10-minute session break, after which we will have a presentation by our colleagues in the social and human sciences sector from Angela Kim on countering hate speech, misinformation, and gender disinformation. Following this, we will have a presentation by our partners at the CARICOM Secretariat in Guyana, led by Ms. Jennifer Britton, who is the Program Manager for the ICT for Development, on building regional connections for our Caribbean content creators. Following this presentation, we will have 2 presentations on intellectual property rights of Caribbean content creators. These presentations will be led by Wendy Hollingsworth, PhD, who is an IP expert and activities coordinator at the CARIForum Intellectual Property Rights and Innovation, and Carol M. Simpson, who is the officer in charge at the Division for Latin America and the Caribbean at the World Intellectual Property Organization. We will have our final presentations for the day from Harriet Warner, who is the Change Management Officer in the Ministry of Education of Antigua and Barbuda, and Alyssa Alvis, PhD, who is a clinical psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Services within the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and Energy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, to close today's session, I will share with you our post-webinar assessment, and I will invite my supervisor, Paul Hector, PhD, who is our advisor for communication and information at the UNESCO Regional Office for the Caribbean, to share our closing remarks. So now that I have gone through the entirety of today's agenda, I now have the distinct pleasure of sharing with you a brief professional biography of our first presenter, Kiran Maharaj. So Kiran Maharaj is president and co-founder of the nonprofit Media Institute for the Caribbean, which is headquartered in Jamaica, and the Caribbean Investigative Journalism Network. Kiran has held roles as the managing director of several successful radio stations, including Heartbeat Radio 104.1 FM, which she founded as the world's first radio station for women. She's a former president of the Trinidad and Tobago Publishers and Broadcasters Association, the TTPBA, after serving 3 consecutive terms. Ms. Maharaj was a freelance journalist for over 30 years, including a former freelance correspondent for the CNN World Report. Please welcome Ms. Kiran Maharaj for her presentation on journalism, ethics, and standards. Welcome, Kiran.
Thank you, Arita, and thank you and good morning to everyone here. I want to give a big shout out to Mr. Paul Hector, who has really been a champion for MIC in the region. We have a lot of people on throughout the Caribbean. What Arita didn't say to you, and maybe Arita and Paul don't know this, but I actually grew up in the world of film. So when I was asked to do this session, I was very excited. My family's background was film distribution from the early 1900s in the region. And my father then got into film production, originally from Trinidad and Tobago, but for the US market. And some of his movies are still on Amazon. So literally, there's been no part of media that I have not touched. And more, I am seeing this intersection of journalism and content creation. Our world has changed. It's evolving. It's changing all of the time. There's now the democratization of media. And so what we have to realize is that at the heart of everything, audiences see and listen to and want to experience is the concept of storytelling. But we have a couple of challenges in that space. So let me start sharing my presentation. And Arita, if you can let me know if it is coming across clearly.
Yes, we have it.
Okay. So what is happening right now is that journalism is in this space where there is mis and disinformation. And that is why this program by UNESCO is so important. And we are at a point now where some people think journalism is dying. And I say no, it is at the point of reinvention. Because how we tell our stories and make them identifiable to the audiences is what truly matters. So we're going to look a little bit at this morning. And if you have any questions, I would be happy if you could put them in the chat. And what we'll do is we will take them at the end, maybe. So when you're thinking of journalism and you're thinking of content creation through the journalistic lens, we have to remember that there are some moral principles. What is this thing called journalism ethics? There has to be truth. There has to be accountability. And of course, there has to be independence, meaning freedom from undue influence. In the journalistic space, and especially with regards to independent media, the concept of media capture exists. Media capture is when we have influencers, so they may be advertisers, they may be politicians, they may be civil society organizations, who may have allegiances to the people who own the forms of media, and so they influence it. I wanted to point that out because as content creators who perhaps are not in the journalistic space, you may be more influenced than others. So we have to start making this differentiation. So the business models are changing, and that is why we have a more complicated information space than we've ever had before. Social media. So let's talk about the challenges in the digital space. I'm going to just move my video box to the side. Here are the true challenges. And I want all of you to think of yourselves as content creators right now and consider whether or not these are challenges you are facing. Social media identity, the personal versus the professional boundaries. In newsrooms, many newsrooms throughout our region and globally actually have social media guidelines for journalists. If you are working, for instance, for government information services and you're on this webinar right now, do you have such a policy? Then what about the responsibility for digital literacy? MIC has done a lot of work in this space, and more we have been pushing the premise that, listen, this is a whole of society approach. It's not up to me alone. It's not up to you alone. To be able to teach generations to understand the importance of getting their facts right, it means they have to know about it in school, in their workplaces, and just about everywhere else there is. So are we as individuals taking the responsibility? And then the print to online shift. This is probably a sad time for our region. We've seen the closure of Starbrook News. We've seen the closure of one radio station in St. Kitts. We have seen the closure of Newsday in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think there are going to be more of that. And that is because the way people consume news and information is moving to the third screen, our mobiles. And people want to get information quickly. Everybody's time deprived, but everybody wants to be in the loop. So you now have the issue of speed versus accuracy. And of course, there's this algorithmic pressure, which I'll explain in a little bit. So almost everybody is considered a citizen journalist these days. If we see an accident, we take a nice video of it, we send it along on WhatsApp because we want to tell friends and family, don't take that road to get to where you're going. But we have to remember that with citizen journalism, there should also be some vetting and some editorial oversight. But individuals are now the ones making that decision. So key findings when we looked at the information ecosystem in our region, and this was part of a project that was done through UNESCO's IPDC with Public Media Alliance based in the UK and with the Association of Caribbean Media Workers. We decided, okay, let's go to 8 nations in our region and let's try to find out what is happening with the way people consume news and what their thoughts are about news. There were some key findings. There was a declining trust in news media. WhatsApp is a primary source of information. And where there was a lot of misinformation came from the health and political areas. Now, we did this survey and this was coming out of COVID, and there was a lot of misinformation that was propagated around that. And in election season, a lot of it happens. We had 7 elections last year, so chances are we have somebody here who was in at least one of those elections and witnessed it. And that is the time of the year where we see a lot more mis and disinformation than any other period. And that is globally. That is not native to our region. And then we have a lot of vulnerable audiences. And I want to talk about, our senior citizens in particular. And I always use the example of when my mother got an iPhone and discovered WhatsApp and how many things her class of 1972 were pushing out and forwarding, and a lot of it was incorrect. But it happens with young people as well. So we have to remember that not everybody is as media literate or savvy as they should be. And of course, we have AI, which is further complicating the space because of deep fakes and many other things. So what do we do to fix that? Verification tools. Newsrooms for decades since they started have verification techniques. With AI, it has become a bit more difficult. I want to stop here and commend UNESCO for TruthYard because I think that that is really an experiment. And if we could replicate that in every country, it would be fantastic. We have to have fact-checking infrastructure. It is costly to be able to do that in newsrooms, but more and more newsrooms have been doing it, and I've been seeing collaboration across newsrooms as a result. We have to do media literacy programs in schools. There should be a media literacy program, and we shouldn't wait to start them in secondary school. To me, they should start in standard 5 or standard 6, because you have to change the way generations get their information and what they do with that information. And of course, for those of you who did not know, UNESCO had an AI roadmap policy. I encourage you all to look at it. It was a fantastic document. And if you haven't made recommendations, I don't think it's late, but we need to have an AI ethics framework. So let's talk about the realities. There are deep fakes. For those of you who don't know what deep fakes are, they can take this video of me speaking to you right now, and they can alter my lips and some other words will be coming out of it. We have avatars. Avatars to me can be dangerous if they are misused. For those of you who did not know, there are now AI political parties. That is a great concern for me because these avatars can be spokespeople to push out ideas that may not be in the best interest of all societies. And then who is an influencer? Is a journalist an influencer? Are you an influencer? What are the guidelines for influencers? Are there any guidelines? All of this is still gray area when we come to the issue of journalism, ethics, and content creation. I'm very happy that you all are going to talk about intellectual property rights because, again, we are still straddling the debate as to what do we do with IP. And I'm going to show you some images I generated and show you what the demise is. And then remember, GPTs are not all accurate. So let me ask you all quickly here, and I'm hoping that Arita could assist me. Have you ever Googled your name? Have you ever done a Google search on yourself? Just raise your hands in the chat. Or use the emoji. I just want to get a sense of that. Be honest, I do it. I do it once a week, actually, because I'm so afraid of all of the deep fakes and everything else. Look at how many hands are going up. Okay, great. So now let me ask you, how many of you have used a GPT to check on yourself? So if you use ChatGPT, right, so some, not as many as Google, but we're getting there. Here's the thing though, GPTs also scrape the web for data so they can be misinformed. And our colleague and vice president at MIC, Wesley Gibbings, was the one who, he was the first person who I knew ChatGPT'd himself, and he brought it back and we had a good laugh. But that is the truth. So we have to be very careful with GPTs. If you're doing research using GPTs, it's very important that you look up all of the footnotes or the references. So a lot of GPTs now, and we have many of them, right? We have ChatGPT, we have Perplexity, we have Claude, and the list is very long. But a lot of them actually put the sources of information. And so whenever you're using a GPT, you want to be able to do that. Breaking news, guys. People are not telling the news anymore. These are avatars in India and Nigeria, and they are the ones who are now coming into your homes and also talking to you on your mobiles, and they are giving you the news. So I'm going to try to play now. Maybe I should ask, have any of you ever seen these before? Not seeing any hands going up. Let me see if I'll get the screen to switch. Arita, make sure you tell me, please, did my screen switch?